I'm Reverend J. Stewart Glover, and you are listening to Faith Talk. Once again, we are joined by Stephen Beard, and today our subject is going to be the power of self-care protocols. So, Stephen, why don't you come on in and introduce yourself again for those who may have not heard about you and who you are.
All right. Thank you, Reverend Glover. Good afternoon for all the listeners. I'm Stephen Beard, and I am a nutritionist, a diabetes prevention coach, a holistic wellness practitioner, and soon to be functional medicine practitioner as well. And we have been spending some amazing time together just diving into metabolic health and discussing many of the lifestyle chronic illnesses that derive from poor metabolic health.
Amen. So today, again, we're going to be exploring the transformative power of self-care protocols. And we're going to introduce perhaps a self-care framework and equip you with practical tips to seamlessly integrate self-care into your daily routine. Again, so far we've uncovered the crucial link between metabolic health and overall well-being. We've talked about nourishing our bodies with nutrient-dense foods and prioritizing restorative sleep, and the importance of muscular health as being foundational pillars for metabolic wellness. So let's jump in.
All right. So let me backtrack. And first, if there's any first-time listeners on here, just want to briefly just go over what is metabolic health. So metabolic health, in basic layman terms, just refers to the body's ability to efficiently process and utilize energy from the food that we eat, which will help regulate blood sugar levels and then manage our lipid metabolism, which is our fat metabolism. Our metabolic health is defined by the optimal levels of 5 markers, and that is our blood sugar levels, our triglycerides, our HDL cholesterol, which is high density lipoprotein, our blood pressure, and then our waist circumference. And then over the past 6 episodes, we've really dived into the critical topics of metabolic health and its profound impact on chronic illnesses. And help me out, Reverend, if I forget any of them. Mm-hmm. High cholesterol, hypertension, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, kidney disease, and heart disease. Did I cover them all?
That sounds about right.
Okay, awesome. And then we've also learned throughout these episodes that metabolic health just isn't about, going to get your blood work done and looking at a lab report. It's about how our lifestyle choices affect our overall well-being. And then, throughout these episodes, we've also emphasized on the pivotal role of lifestyle factors that play in either preventing or escalating these chronic lifestyle conditions. From the food that we eat to the way that we move, our sleep quality, how we manage our stress, and even think, because every aspect of our lives impacts our metabolic health.
Mm-hmm. I like that you brought our attention back to how we think, because in the previous episodes, we also talked about the psychological component or the mindset of addressing your needs.
Correct.
All right.
So, yeah.
So we also talked about the importance, again, of muscular development. Maybe we can talk about that. I mean, we know about diet and exercise. Well, just hit on the muscular part for a moment, the importance of it.
So the importance of muscular development, and that would be skeletal muscle.
Mhm.
So studies continue to show that healthy skeletal muscle is responsible for up to 80% of our glucose uptake. And more or less what that just means that the carbohydrates that we eat, carbohydrates are broken down into sugar. So once the pancreas releases the insulin, and the insulin's responsibility is to carry the glucose to the cells of the body, healthy skeletal muscle stores glucose as stored glycogen in its muscle tissue. So if you have healthy skeletal muscle, if your body composition is more lean body mass than fat mass, then you will be able to regulate your blood sugar control, have better insulin sensitivity, much better improved metabolic health versus an individual who is sedentary. If you're looking at a body composition, has much more fat mass than lean body mass. So building skeletal muscle is one of the most important aspects in metabolic health.
Mm-hmm. Stephen, we know that if a person goes to a doctor and the doctor, provides them with a report that says that they are perhaps pre-diabetic, we're here today to let folks know that this does not have to be a death sentence for you if you are prepared to make some adjustments in your lifestyle. And that's what we're here to talk about today, starting with introducing a holistic self-care framework. So perhaps we can move on to discussing a comprehensive self-care framework.
Of course. So, and I like that we're discussing this because self-care is a term that's often, thrown around, but very seldom understood in its entirety. And, when we talk about self-care in the context of our health and metabolic health, we're not just referring to, the typical bubble baths or the face masks that a lot of people will do, although those can be a part of it. We're talking more about having a holistic approach that encompasses nurturing our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to be able to imagine self-care as the foundation upon which we build our metabolic health on. It's about nourishing ourselves from the inside out, addressing the root causes of our imbalance or imbalances, and then fostering a deep sense of vitality and resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of said that slowly, so the listeners would be able to listen to that and allow that to sink in. It's truly about recognizing all the aspects of our health that are interconnected, and by addressing each one, which will allow us to be able to achieve true wellness. And this is really the true definition of holistic care. When we're talking about having a self-care approach.
Mm-hmm. So can we start with, the nutritional nourishment of cultivating a diet that's rich in what?
So we want to be able to cultivate a diet that is rich in whole foods, plant-based types of foods. So we want to be able to eliminate as much as possible high processed foods, refined sugars, unhealthy fats, which would be foods that are loaded with saturated fats and trans fats. And, a lot of times people are like, okay, but I don't know what types of foods these are. And really, to make it simple, is when you are at the supermarket, we should be shopping from the outer part of the supermarket, because that is where you will find your fresh, lean cuts of meat. If you're a meat eater, you will find all of your fresh fruits, all of your vegetables, and then your plant-based carbohydrates, and beans and legumes and stuff like that. So I think that's probably the easiest way of putting that.
And I think remembering back to an earlier episode, we talked about being careful, even when it comes to, you mentioned a plant-based diet, but even when it comes to selecting products that are advertised or marketed as being plant-based, as potentially being not a good choice.
Correct.
Fake meats and stuff like that.
Yeah. So when I say plant-based, we want to be able to eat most of our food and most of the food that enters our body should be in its wholest form. So when I say plant-based, I'm not talking about like plant-based meats. I'm talking about your foods that are literally grown from a tree or from the ground. So that would be things like beans, legumes, your carbs, which would be like a potato, a sweet potato. You also have couscous, quinoa, different styles of rice, whether it's black rice, brown rice, wild rice, those types of things. Anything that is packaged and is labeled plant-based, if the ingredient is more than 3 or 4, then it is a heavily processed type of food that you want to be able to stay away from.
The processing of food, we're talking about, you think about additives and all of this type of stuff. But I personally, I don't even buy, if I'm going in the supermarket, I don't buy fruit that's been chopped up already by somebody else, because there's too much opportunity for bacteria and stuff to enter into the process when you have people cutting up your food. So you might go and you might see melons or something that's already chopped up and put in a little package for you. I stay away from that kind of stuff.
So yes, so you can do that, and that's great and fantastic if you can do that. Mm-hmm. What I always try to explain to my clients in my business is everything is on a continuum. So I try to meet my clients where they currently are. So if there's someone who has very minimal time in their busy schedule, I would not really direct them to go buy a whole pineapple and sit there and spend 15 minutes slicing it up, mm-hmm. versus go ahead and buy it already sliced up in a plastic container. Mm-hmm. Yes, you're probably going to be paying 3 times the amount of what you would pay for just a regular pineapple. But that's kind of like what you get. Like, you're going to pay more for something that's already been cut up and packaged for you, versus if you just buy it in a whole form and you spend the time yourself to do it. So, it's great that you're able to do it like that. I personally am too. I prefer not to buy anything that's already been sliced up and put in the plastic container because I enjoy doing it myself. But there are those people out there that don't really have the time to be able to do that. So I would always prefer buying it already prepared. And we're talking about fruit as an example, versus not eating any type of fruit at all because you feel that you have to buy it whole and then find the time to slice it up and prepare it yourself, if that makes sense.
Sure. And also in a prior episode, you talked about the importance of eating your fruits as opposed to drinking them in, disproportionate amounts.
100%. And again, it depends on the type of fruit, but our fruit also contains dietary fiber. And in most fruits, that dietary fiber is going to be coming in, the skin or the covering of the fruit. So if you're juicing the fruit, yes, you're increasing the bioavailability, which is the absorption of the nutrients, but you're eliminating the dietary fiber. And I can pretty much say if, someone who's listening is suffering from any of these metabolic lifestyle conditions, our food isn't where it needs to be at from a consumption perspective to where you can honestly say, I'm getting in enough dietary fiber. So then, I would suggest eating the fruit versus juicing.
So, Stephen, I'd like to introduce the idea of our being. It's necessary for us to get the proper rest. I think maybe in our last episode, you talked about when you're, let's say, sleep deprived, that it raises your insulin levels, was it?
And it actually raises your glucose levels. Yes.
Okay, there you go. So we need to get our proper rest. And what does that look like?
Yeah. So, sleep has always been very, very underrated, especially in this country. And even when I have conversations with people and they're like, oh, yeah, I'm completely fine with 4 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep a day. More and more and more studies out there show when we go below the superficial of diabetic diagnosis that it can be traced to poor sleep quality, can be the leading cause of type 2 diabetes. And the reason for that being is that poor sleep habits disrupt our hormonal balance, which leads to things like increased hunger and cravings and impaired glucose metabolism that also elevates our stress levels. So over time, chronic sleep deprivation can contribute to weight gain. It contributes to insulin resistance and other metabolic disturbances as well. So again, I'm looking at that from a more holistic and functional aspects instead of the basic conventional aspects that most doctors kind of look at it as.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about making sure we get adequate rest, or the rest that we need. I mean, hey, we live in a world that tends to keep us running all the time, and a life of distractions, and we need to reel it in and get the rest that we need, which kind of segues into how we manage our stress. So how can we talk about implementing some stress reducing strategies that contribute to our wellness?
Of course. The most effective stress management techniques or strategies, as you say, is meditation, deep breathing exercises, practicing mindfulness. Those are the top three. And then also incorporating exercise. So when we're looking at it from a stress management perspective and not a metabolic health perspective, getting outside and grounding yourself with Mother Nature, so getting outside and literally you can sit and just sit in silence, but be outside. I love to go grounding, and grounding is where you're completely barefooted, and I'm outside in the grass and I'm grounding myself with Mother Nature, and then I'm also possibly touching a tree if at all possible. And that just kind of transfers energy, negative energy outside of my body, and it makes me feel so much better from a days full of stress from a heavy workload.
There's a lot of talk lately about the reality that trauma is actually stored in the body.
100%.
As opposed 100%. To, most people would jump to think that the trauma is all in the mind, but they're saying that it actually gets stored up in the body. So when you're talking about engaging a grounding experience, and I believe that helps release that trauma that's stored up within the body, thereby reducing your stress levels.
100%.
You mentioned practicing mindfulness. What do we mean by that?
So mindfulness is really just creating awareness, like being aware of what it is that you're doing. Like I said before, we're living in a life where we are consistently go, 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 go.
Right.
And it can be things from we eat while we talk, we eat while we work, we eat while we're watching TV. Whereas if we were creating mindfulness when we ate, we would be eating without doing any of those things. So we are aware of, for example, how much food we're actually putting on a fork when the fork is being put into our mouths. We're taking time to enjoy the taste and the smell of the food. We're placing the fork down and we are masticating or chewing the food 100% completely to help it digest better. Other things around mindfulness is just creating awareness around the environment that you're in. You know, so many times we're with our friends and family, and most of the times we're on our phone.
Right.
Why can't we literally just absorb that moment in time and practice gratitude and be thankful, number one, that we have people, you know, who can uplift us, who can make us laugh, and we're not alone or feel lonely. Number two, we're able to be around other people and to be able to laugh and be creative and have fun, whatever it may be. So it's really just being aware, creating that awareness around our environment and everything that we do. And many, many studies, you know, also show that it reduces stress. It will reduce your anxiety, and it improves your mental health.
I have to share with you a retreat experience that I had. I went on a spiritual retreat, and it was actually a silent retreat where you don't talk with anybody other than a spiritual director once a day. And this went on for a week. And so one of the things that I did was, you know, you're talking about being aware of your environment. I sat in, you know, there's a beach there. And I sat there on the beach for at least an hour and a half and just paid attention and became aware of everything that I was seeing. And I'm going to tell you something. The longer I stayed there, the more I actually saw. The activity on the water, on the sand, and even looking very closely at, you know, the water breaking against the sand and the different birds that would appear and leave. This was a very liberating exercise, just to kind of bring yourself focused on what is actually going on around you.
I love to hear that. That's pretty cool. And yeah, when I lived in Miami, that would be my way of practicing mindfulness, was taking myself to the beach every night and then just sitting. So that's an amazing experience.
No,
That's awesome.
It is. And I believe, you know, I'm a person of faith. I'm a preacher. So I believe I encountered God in that moment. And through the glorious, majestic splendor of the creation that we all live in. So, and then recently I've been discovering that returning to reading, you know, I'm a seminary graduate, and we had to read so much that I actually put it down for a little while. But now I'm returning to the reading, and I think that reading is a good exercise in terms of mindfulness. It keeps your brain active, and especially as we move into our senior years and have a tendency to slow down with some things.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Absolutely.
100%. Just something that I would like to stress with mindfulness, because I know this is something that we really haven't dived that much into for any of our listeners out there. You know, really the main objective of mindfulness is choosing to cultivate your awareness, which is the intention part. But then we also want to make sure if we're creating that awareness, that we want to make sure that we have attention. So it's really just making sure that we're paying attention, like you had mentioned during your experience, to the present moment, the sensations, the thoughts, the feelings in that present moment. And then the third part of it is just being kind and curious to yourself during that moment and not being judgmental. And that's kind of referred to as the attitude, because there's really three main concepts of mindfulness: the intention, the attention, and then the attitude that you have. And I believe during your experience, you had all three of those.
Amen. It's really important that you mentioned non-judgmental, because somehow through our lived experience, often these ideas of or thoughts of of inadequacy and shame and all kind of stuff enters into a person's mind, and for whatever reason, that something may have happened in our experience, our lived experience, and I think we need, as you said earlier, to be kind to ourselves and let those thoughts just pass, like as though they never came.
Yep. And it's a hard thing to do sometimes, but
it is.
Through practice and continuation, you will get, or we will, I should say, we will get better at that.
Yeah. So we can, move on towards. An earlier episode, we talked about this psychological component of being in the right mind, framework of your own thinking in order to create an awareness and actually implement a strategy towards your wellness. So how does the psychological component fit into all of this?
Yeah, so I refer to that as like our cognitive patterns or our psychology. Our thoughts have power when it comes to anything, especially our health. And a negative thought pattern, self-criticism, and even trying to have perfection. So perfectionism, can trigger stress responses in the body, contributing to metabolic dysfunction over a period of time. So if we're able to cultivate a positive mindset, practice self-compassion, and then challenge our limiting beliefs, all of these things can support our overall well-being and our metabolic health. And we all have limiting beliefs. I have had some people say, "Oh, I have no fears, I have no limiting beliefs or anything like that." And I'm like, then dude, you're not human,
right?
Because God did not create a perfect person.
Right.
And we are walking around every single day with limiting beliefs and with fears.
So let's just think about some practical tips for integrating this self-care into our daily life. Are there, let's say, some habits or rituals that we can develop over time that help us begin with actually making this real in our lives as opposed to just an idea of being well?
Of course there is, and this is my favorite part of what I do with my clients and stuff. So, self-care, it's about infusing every moment of our lives with intention and compassion. And I always like to start off when I have this conversation with anyone with that specific sentence, with intention and compassion, because those two things, unfortunately, are lacking in many individuals. So once we're able to have the intention and have the compassion with ourselves, the first step is to start small. So you just want to choose one aspect of self-care, whether it's tied to mindful eating, nutrition, incorporating movement into your daily lives, carving out time for relaxation, whatever it is that you feel is important to you, you just want to choose one and start small, and then commit to making that small change each and every single day, because it's all about the repetitions. The repetitions will build the consistency. And then you need to have the consistency in that behavior for it to eventually become a habit.
So a practical example would be something like developing, if you're interested in doing this, what they refer as intermittent fasting, where you don't want to start out by saying, okay, I'm going to fast for 20 hours a day. That's not where you want to start.
No. So for anyone who is even thinking about doing intermittent fasting, I always say, number one, I ask the first question: when's the last time you ate versus the first time you eat the following day? So we're all fasting.
Right.
And then starting small would be increasing that fasting time by 30 minutes. That way it allows your body to adjust and to acclimate at a proper speed, I guess I would say. And then eventually build up to, whether it is the 16/8 intermittent fasting or however many hours you're trying to fast. But you're definitely wanting to start it taking small steps and increments.
Yeah, when we try to make too much of an adjustment, it usually fails, or it has the potential to fail, and we just give up.
Correct. And that's kind of like the all or nothing thought mentality that many people have. It's either all, like nutrition. It's either I have to stop all sugar, stop all fast food, stop all processed foods, or I can't do it at all.
Right.
And it's like, no. That's not how it's supposed to be. You just choose one, map out small steps, integrate it into your daily activities, and then once you achieve that, celebrate those small wins, and then progress to the next step.
Well, here's another practical example of that. I mean, instead of the all or nothing approach in terms of food, if you're just beginning to try to make some adjustments, instead of going hard and eliminating everything that you think is no good for you, perhaps you could make a small adjustment by adding some things into your diet that are better for you than you're used to eating. Add adequate vegetables and fruits if that's been missing from your diet. So we can start out by making a small step, which is actually a pretty big step, of just including some things in your diet or that are good for you.
Can I say I love you for saying that?
That's good. That is supposed to be the right approach,
because when we look at us in this country, in the United States, and the consumption of food, we are very deficient when it comes to vegetables. So yes, instead of cutting or removing something, we should try adding something, and that should be starting with vegetables and fruit. So I love that you say that, because that should be the approach instead of subtracting or removing things away.
So we're talking about having some rituals or practices or some discipline without being too hard on ourselves that align with our self-care priorities, right? Whether it's a intermittent fasting or taking a midday mindfulness break, or even writing down or engaging in some sort of calming evening routine. Let me ask you this. All of this conversation sounds a little bit individualistic, like we're doing this all by ourselves, but can community connections help in any way along this journey?
100%. When I look at it, when you say community, one of the most important things that helps an individual succeed and celebrate wins is surrounding yourselves around like-minded individuals who are on the same journey as you are. If you're not capable of doing that, then surrounding yourselves around a supporting environment, whether that would be a community of your friends, your family, church community, The list can go on with that.
Right.
But yes, having a supportive network, kind of like what I like to refer it to, or community, will definitely play an integral part in one's success.
Mhm. And then nowadays we also have the benefit of technology that that can help us along our way, whether they are meditation apps or for in the Ignatian spirituality world, there's a examine, what they call the examine prayer, which is a prayer that's done throughout the day, and there are apps available for that. It's a guided meditation, but there's also new equipment in these gyms that we just didn't have years ago. Things that target specific functions, and so what I'm getting at is that technology is something that meal planning apps, things that help us discipline ourselves, and at the same time be gentle, because we can do a lot of the wrong things, in terms of just going to the gym and exhausting yourself and misguided workout routines. It's good to utilize technology to give us some information about how we should go about whatever it is that we're trying to do. So
couldn't agree with you more there.
So we need to harness some of the leverage the technology that's available to us nowadays. And then, of course, we need to set some boundaries and learning to say no to some things, especially when it comes to managing your stress. Often it could be our overextending ourselves to with other people in ways that cause us problems in terms of managing our own stress. So we have to learn how to set boundaries, and even in relationships, and along with the foods that we eat, we need to be able to say no to some things.
100%. And what I say to individuals who say things kind of like from that realm of what you just said, I just tell people, look, self-care is not selfish. Focusing on you should always be a priority. And just prioritize yourself, because if you take a step outside and look at the bigger picture, if your health declines, then you're not going to be able to continue doing the things that you like to do or supporting the people that you like to support in the capacity that you currently are doing. So don't always put yourself on the back burner, and continue saying yes to others. You can still say yes to others, but still make sure that you're prioritizing yourself, setting time aside in your calendar for you to focus on the things that's going to help improve your health and vitality, or keep you healthy, to prevent any of these metabolic conditionings, from happening.
As a person of faith, I'm reminded of the words of Jesus, who told us, when somebody asked him what's the most important, law or commandment, he said, love God, love your neighbor, and then he said, as you love yourself. So we have a tendency to think that humility is disregarding ourselves and putting our own lives and our own well-being on the sacrificial altar somewhere. But actually, we are to love ourselves as well. And let that be demonstrated through our self-care. So I think this is a good place to rest. I think it's been a informative session and gives people something to think about. So Stephen, do we have any closing thoughts?
Let's see what I can come up with. Yes. So closing this out, all I really want to stress is just be gentle with yourself. Self-care is not about perfection. It is about progress. So along the journey of making progress, if you have a setback, don't beat yourself up. Instead, practice self-compassion, and get back on track and learn how to celebrate your successes.
Amen. Celebrate. I like that word, celebrate. We don't want to make this a hardship that's unendurable. We want to be able to get through it. So being kind to ourselves and less just judgmental, and at the same time celebrating our progress is so important. I'm Reverend Jay Glover. You've been listening to Faith Talk. I thank Stephen Beard for coming in and with his insightful contributions to this conversation. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time. God bless you. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.